Hi again then guys, and welcome to episode 13 of Weekend Warriors, the review series for GranTurismo's pretty broad selection of sports cars, be it two-door convertibles, 2+2 coupes, and a variety of others in between. And this is one of the more upmarket vehicles of the series, alongside some of the other Mercs and Jags, that kind of thing. A vehicle which is about as high in the sports car category as you can get without being a super sport. It's a very, very powerful car and a quick car, but a vehicle which, for the most part, isn't used a huge amount. Understandably so, because with Mercedes, like some other manufacturers, there are so many cars to choose from, and Mercedes' design style, for the most part, is very similar. So unless you're a fan of Mercedes, their cars can quite easily begin to blend together. Which one do you buy? Which one's worth buying? And so people tend to go for the same, slightly more obvious choices. Your SLSs, SLRs, C63s, etc. And so these ones in between, such as some of the lower level SLs, the CL, the CLK, the E-Class even, can sometimes be overlooked. The question is, are they worth a second look? Are they worth checking out? Well, this car is interesting from one point of view, and I think that interesting thing is that the touring car version of this same vehicle is really popular. So it's kind of ironic that the road version isn't. Because, of course, the CLK touring car, which is very similar to this vehicle, it's based on the same vehicle, is really, really popular and an excellent touring car. It's one of the quickest touring cars in the game in a straight line and around the track, and people love the car. It has reliable handling. It's always been one of the best touring cars in the game ever since it was included on GranTurismo, and yet the road version sees, from most players at least, hardly any use at all. You just don't see people using the majority, in fact, of Mercedes AMG models. As I said, people tend to stick to the same old choices. So does this car offer a lot, or is it just not worth checking out? Well, it's a Mercedes AMG, so certain things are pretty much always guaranteed. You're going to have a pretty large engine, quite a lot of power, and a pretty big price. Those things are almost always guaranteed. Unless it's the electric drive, then you're not guaranteed a large engine. But in the case of this particular car, as the 55 moniker suggests, the engine is around 5.5 litres, it's actually a 5.4, and this is one of those vehicles, unfortunately, like the M3 and some others, which doesn't have the aspiration that it deserves. It's left naturally aspirated, and that is such a shame, because this car deserves more power. Not necessarily a huge twin turbo or anything like that, but even just a supercharger. After all, Mercedes AMG models are very suitable candidates for having superchargers. Unfortunately though, this car isn't allowed that. Thankfully though, due to the fact that you've got that 5.4 litre V8 to work with, and that AMG are excellent engine builders, you do still have pretty impressive amount of power to work with. It certainly doesn't suffer as much as, say, the E46 M3s from BMW. This car still puts out 635 horsepower, and that's not bad at all. That's supercar territory. As far as torque, it also puts out 582 foot-pounds, which isn't too surprising from an AMG. They are known for having very torquey engines. And although, yes, 1302 kilos does make it pretty heavy for the sports car class, it's still not as heavy as it could be given how well equipped Mercedes models are. And again, AMGs are known for being very heavy. Some of them weigh around 2 tons or even more. So overall, the package is actually starting to look pretty good. So the question really arises even more, why don't people use this thing? 635 horsepower is not bad at all. 1300 kilos is certainly not a ridiculous amount of weight to work with. That's lighter than a GT3 race car. And 488 horsepower per tonne, although not amazing, isn't bad. Certainly not, far from it. As far as its maximum PP, it's also pretty reasonable. 562 is not bad, actually, for a car with that much power. If you think about the other kind of vehicles that you get at that PP level, relatively few of them can have over 600 horsepower. So overall, that's pretty good, at least on paper. As far as price, it is pretty expensive. It's an AMG after all, and the Mercs in general are very expensive on all GranTurismo games, just like Aston Martins always are. And the price on this car is just under 150 grand. So yeah, it's really expensive, especially for a non-premium. But the question is, should you buy one? Well, it depends what kind of driver and collector you are. If you're looking purely for the best possible value for money, in other words, the best bang for buck, then no, of course not. 635 horsepower just is not going to make this as quick as other 150 grand or less vehicles. Even the Supra, for instance, costs just over a third of that price and produces significantly more power and has a lot more performance. So for pure value for money, of course it's not the best possible deal. But some vehicles don't need to be necessarily the best possible deal, they're just good cars anyway. Or at the very least, fun cars. So is this one of those? Well, yes and no, because yes, it is fun to drive. It's nice to use a car that many people don't. It is quick. The top speed is around 250 miles per hour without NOS or draft, and that's certainly not bad at all for the power. The acceleration is strong, and the handling certainly isn't bad. I mean, the touring car had to develop its handling from somewhere, so it would be difficult to imagine it being a bad handling car. The problem that this particular car suffers from is that it's not good enough in any particular way. But if you are looking to try something different, something new, an alternative to more obvious choices, you may want to check out the CLK 55. But that's it overall for this particular pick. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.